Hey, good morning, you guys. A little sprinkle in the air. Got my puffy jacket on today. But I want to talk to you about something. It's about pulling your weeds. So last night, I'm out here, probably 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I'm pulling the weeds in the garden because that's about the time I got to it. And even though it ain't perfect, it's getting closer, right? Getting closer. And so it brought me to kind of a thought this morning. And how sometimes you just have to pull the weeds. And stick with me because the idea on this kind of came about because sometimes when things are growing and they're young and you're cultivating, you're planting something that you want, there's a lot of stuff in the garden that looks like what you want. And it acts, it grows maybe at the same rate. Maybe you amended your soils, and so they're both healthy and similar color. And I mean, one of the things is like tomatoes, right? Almost everything starts out looks like a freaking tomato plant. Um, but then at some point, you realize that the weed is different. At some point, um, not only does that weed, you know, no longer look like your other crops, but that weed might actually be a detriment to your other crops. Now, sometimes weeds are just fine. Sometimes you don't really, it doesn't bother you to have a weed. I mean, in honesty, grass is like the best weed, right? And a weed may not have intent to have originally been there, but the thing that a weed does is that before it dies off, it casts its seed on its own and it multiplies quite quickly until eventually it takes over the original host location, right? That's weed. I think sometimes we forget that weeds aren't just in the garden. Sometimes weeds are people. And sometimes they look and they act just like the things that you want to have there. Sometimes you're just seeing where they go. And I'm gonna be honest, sometimes it's easier to wait until that weed is full grown to pull it. I know for me, man, there's a couple weeds in this garden where I let these suckers get like this high instead of this high, because this high is really, they just break off. But when they get this big, then they just pull straight out. They're obvious. You know that this is a weed. You know that this is not something that you're planning to eat. And sometimes when it shows its true colors, it's easier to recognize and it's easier to pull. Odd thought, right? Sometimes you're around people that are the same way. Sometimes you have to decide in your life who's important to be around and who, if given their opportunity at their point of maturity, who will cast their seed and destroy your whole crop. That's what I got. Don't forget, every once in a while, you got to look at your garden. And it may be time in your life to do some weeding.